So what you need to understand is that the intelligence community is thrilled if the UFO community says it was a UFO, it was all alien, when in reality it's not that simple. It's both. Some of it's ET, some of it's man-made. Some of it's both. And the Cash Landrum crash case was both. So this understanding is key. Otherwise, everyone's going to assume anything that we don't understand that zips around is extraterrestrial. Moreover, anything that would come over and do an Independence Day attack, boom, is extraterrestrial, when it isn't. It is not. It is absolutely not. It's all a lie. It's the biggest hoax in human history, and you've got to wake up to this. Now, here's another object that's been seen. Very unusual, very detailed, excellent rendition that Mr. Schrad has done. Man-made, very advanced. I suspect would deceive almost everyone who saw it. And this is the Hudson Valley boomerang shape, probably out of the Boeing Phantom Works. And tens of thousands of people saw this, by the way. The ones who were close enough to it could see actually the structure and the girds and the struts and the infrastructure of the craft. Well, interstellar vehicles don't have that. So here's a little tip. The ET objects are seamless, have no parts like that, and have a completely different quality to them because they are interstellar and transdimensional. Because they go beyond the speed of light and they are manufactured in a way that is completely different. So listen very carefully because I'm going to blow your minds, if I haven't already. And I know this is a lot of information in an hour. But listen carefully. Your life will depend on it. And those folks in Washington and Moscow listening, listen very carefully. Interstellar vehicles do not manufacture the way we do. So like if you're going to make one of these, you're going to dig up the materials, put it through a mold, rivet it together, have plates and struts and parts, right? But it's got a power plant on it that's electromagnetic-gravitic, mass cancellation, it floats, it's silent, looks and sounds like a UFO, and it could be a saucer, it could be any shape. They can make them in any shape. An interstellar vehicle is not manufactured that way. So I don't want to lose everyone with a lot of jargon here, but if you can for a moment, you've heard of 3D printing? Imagine if you did 3D printing, but from another dimension. Think about that for just a minute. So that you, if you had mastered 0-point energy, the base energy field that all matter and energy is fluxing from, all subatomic particles, and you had mastered it in such a way that you could create a resonant frequency in the shape of a spacecraft. And it would then go from that fourth, fifth dimensional energy field into 3D as almost an extrusion mold. Does this make sense? And where it would materialize in that perfect form. It wasn't something that was put together by digging up those minerals, melting them, smelting them, and riveting them together. This is why they do not have those kind of moving parts and seams. They are seamless. Very important data point for those of you who will have a close encounter with a man-made object versus a close encounter with an extraterrestrial object. I'm trying to give you a little tutorial here. And I'll take it one step further. When they have retrieved extraterrestrial objects and they've done the assays, the metallurgical studies and atomic studies, the material is so pure that even in the vacuum of space, we could not create it with any known human technologies because it's being created transdimensionally using these sort of electronic fields that cause matter to be aggregated, if you will, out of thin air, out of space. Because everything, space is not empty. The majority of the cosmos, black energy, black, dark matter, et cetera, and so on, you can aggregate the subatomic, atomic, and molecular structure for any element or any matter or any complex molecule and materialize it. Does this make sense? It is a known science in the very high end of the intelligence community. Now we're talking about something which the guys I know at the CIA call WSFM, weird science and frickin' magic. That is what they call it. Now, my uncle worked for Northrop Grumman on the lunar module, landed on the moon, and I talked to an engineer there not long ago, and he said, yes, we just call it PFM. And excuse my language, pure fucking magic. And he says that's what they call it. He was an aerospace engineer. And so when you begin to deal with these sort of very advanced technologies, there are grades of it. So there's man-made anti-grav, there's man-made anti-gravity systems that have been hybridized, studying extraterrestrial materials, notch up.
Weird science and frickin' magic. That was just a little clip from a presentation by Dr. Stephen Greer that I've been watching recently. It's titled The Cosmic False Flag. The title itself was pretty intriguing, and I'm sure many of you have been seeing it. He's kind of been popping up a lot lately on YouTube. Supposedly he's got a documentary that's coming out soon called Unacknowledged or something like that. And so I've seen smaller pieces of his material, but this is the first time I've really looked at it with it all at any depth. Not being somebody who was super focused on the whole UFO community or MUFON or anything like that. So I know he's been around for a long time, supposedly since 1994, and clearly a very well-connected guy in terms of sources and whistleblowers, and he's a pretty central figurehead. And I don't pretend to know much about him, but I know he's mentioned things like the von Braun quotes about first there being the Cold War, and then rogue nations, and then the war on terrorism, and then threats from outer space. And so he's used that several times. And I included that one clip because I did find it interesting where he was talking about the whole idea of the extraterrestrial craft not being put together the way that human craft is, with nuts and bolts and things like that, but they're seamless because they're essentially printed from a higher dimension. They're materialized, and he's referring to things like dark matter and dark energy. And once again we see kind of allusions to extraterrestrial life or alien life, and a connection to higher dimensions and dark matter and dark energy, which connects to the video I made not long ago about Professor Scharf and his recent article about alien life being embedded basically in higher dimensions of the universe and the physics of the universe, or really the metaphysics, and the dark energy and the dark matter. So definitely some interesting commonalities. But overall, what interests me about just his whole presentation is just kind of the broader narrative, where at least for me it was kind of new to be hearing somebody talking about, on the one hand you have alien deception in the sense of an alien false flag, which is a big stream in the alternative media, but at the same time he's talking about all the government craft government that they achieved artificial grav drives in like 1954 and things like this, and all the skunk works and all the underground bases and the black projects, and it talks about Ben Rich and on and on and on, talking about all these programs. But then that it's all man. So there's a hoax element. There's to where he's saying that they're going to be very soon, actually now, very soon, rolling out an alien false flag attack, and he's claiming to want to warn the public and wake people up so that they're not fooled by it and to stop it, But at the same time, he still believes in aliens and extraterrestrials and many races of them and many higher technologies. So it's an interesting narrative because it sort of incorporates these two things, which he's seemingly dead serious, and I don't know, maybe people would say that he's himself a controlled opposition kind of figure, and that could be, but at the same time, he could be completely sincere in believing in this theory, and then but it still serves the purposes of the ultimate deception, which, of course, from a biblical point of view, when we're looking at these things in spiritual terms, there are no quote-unquote aliens. There are spiritual beings, spiritual entities, higher dimensional entities, fallen angels, demons, and the whole. So that's why this is interesting, of course, is because it ties into, okay, on the one hand, you're basically demonizing this, the New World Order. He doesn't use that term, but the human powers that have, in various ways, achieved very, very comparable levels of technology to the supposedly ET craft, and they can make them in all kinds of different shapes and sizes and cloaking devices and all these things. But at the same time, that there's a differential, and sometimes they're like composites of like even using alien material and things that have been reverse engineered or things that have just been straight up borrowed, and it's a pretty complex paradigm, or whatever you want to call it, explanation. But in reality, because he still believes in extraterrestrials, at the end of the day, that's, the deception is still in place, and in such a way to where now it would seem to be kind of presenting the kind of scenario where the quote-unquote real aliens are positioned to be the good guys, the saviors, the ones who could potentially come in and intervene if the human forces posing as aliens, do commit some false flag attack. It's really weird how it kind of plays back into the same old alien savior meme. It feeds off of both the alien invasion propaganda, alien invasion meme, and the alien savior meme, which have always been kind of going on simultaneously, through science fiction over the whole last century. And I've always kind of had this idea that they would both somehow be incorporated. You'd have the good aliens and the bad aliens, right? But if the quote-unquote bad aliens are eventually revealed to not be aliens at all, and they are the elites, the New World Order, posing as aliens and posing as UFOs, and somehow that was eventually, I mean, what a crazy, there's just all kinds of really, really interesting possibilities that really do fit quite perfectly into what Bible prophecy tells us about the Antichrist figure being a savior who's embraced by the entire world. And maybe he's a man, maybe he's a transhuman, maybe he's alien, who knows. But I just after watching this, it did seem like something worth noting and paying attention to as sort of a very possible kind of adjustment to the script. Or maybe this is part of the script all along, but a development either way, especially this is happening in the context of all the WikiLeaks stuff, the emails, and all the disclosure buzz that's going on. It's definitely, there's this big push for disclosure and this big push to out the elites and their fake alien technology. And of course, that's just all another layer of the deception. I mean, it is funny to hear him talking about things like the seamless UFOs of the extraterrestrials, that have been materialized out of thin air, quote unquote, and how they can just, they're not mechanical in the classical sense. And it reminds me of when seeing Disney's Flight of the Navigator as a kid, and the morphing seamless spaceship, and how NASA couldn't even penetrate it and get inside because it was this pure alien alloy, and it was just impossible to penetrate. And I mean, this really isn't anything new that hasn't already been pushed by the mainstream media. So it just reminded me of this, so I got a kick out of that.
When in reality, it's not that simple. It's both. Some of it's ET, some of it's man-made. Some of it's both. And the Cash Landrum crash case was both. So this understanding is key. Otherwise, everyone's going to assume anything that we don't understand that zips around is extraterrestrial. Moreover, anything that would come over and do an Independence Day attack, very advanced, I suspect would deceive almost everyone who saw it. And this is the Hudson Valley boomerang shape, probably out of the Boeing Phantom Works. And tens of thousands of people saw this, by the way. The ones who were close enough to it could see actually the structure and the girds and the struts and the infrastructure of the craft. Well, interstellar vehicles don't have that. So here's a little tip. Boom is extraterrestrial when it isn't. It is not. It is absolutely not. It's all a lie. It's the biggest hoax in human history, and you've got to wake up to this. Now, here's another object that's been seen. Very unusual, very detailed, excellent rendition that Mr. Shred has done. Man-made. So what you need to understand is that the intelligence community is thrilled if the UFO community says it was a UFO, it was all alien. The ET objects are seamless, have no parts like that, and have a completely different quality to them because they are interstellar and transdimensional, because they go beyond the speed of light and they are manufactured in a way that is completely different. So listen very carefully, because I'm going to blow